Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, rushing ahead. Keep up with all this at Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley on Twitter. And remember the books you got to read for this week: Obama, the Postmodern Coup, Barack H. Obama, the Unauthorized Biography, and Surviving the Cataclysm. So I hope to have on the website this week, Emergency Program to Deal with Default, an emergency program to preserve human life and human civilization. If these Tea Party lunatics go all the way and force the national bankruptcy, we will survive. Those banks will not survive. Wall Street will be gone. The privately owned, privately run central banking system of the world will be gone. And maybe that will be the silver lining of this horrible situation. Seize the Fed, 0% credit for production. Why should the United States government, with all of its power, have to kowtow to a bunch of bankers whose physical plant amounts to an office building and some computers and a bunch of overpaid jerks, pretentious, arrogant clowns? So the other thing to remember here, Bill Gross has decided to short U.S. Treasuries. We'll remember that. China has stopped buying. That's understandable. Soros is blathering about how to replace the dollar. Right now there is no replacement for the dollar. And if you kid yourself that there is, you're wrong. The only way you could replace the dollar would be to match that U.S. Treasury market with a $1 trillion a day turnover and the capability of handling $3-4 trillion in a day, cash. So we've got the BRICS, we've got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa talking about replacing the dollar. These are mainly political statements. Soros attempting to speculate on it. We're going to have the IMF spring meeting here in just a minute. Just remember, here in the United States, 18% fanatics are willing to cut Medicare. 22% fanatics are willing to cut Social Security. 17% of fanatics oppose a surtax on millionaires. 60% fear the Republican austerity psychosis. 22% are willing to accept cuts in K through 12 education. The New Deal majority. This is a New Deal country. I just saw Holtz Aitken debating Krugman on public broadcasting. We're a center-right country. Sorry, we're not. 77% support Social Security, no cuts. 76% say don't cut Medicare. 67% don't cut Medicaid. 55% don't cut jobless benefits. 56% say jobs and growth are the main thing. Only 40% are obsessed by the deficit. 81% support a surtax on millionaires. Now let's get to the international page. Bandar in Pakistan. It's clear that through Bahrain and through Yemen, the U.S. is targeting Saudi Arabia. Bandar has now gone to Pakistan, the head of the National Security Council of Saudi Arabia, to set up a protection deal. And this may include the nuclear weapons. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. The Obama regime is freaked. They sent Donelan over there as an emergency envoy, basically saying, get back on the plantation, don't you dare, with a letter from Barkey to King Abdullah. Reminds me of Obama rushing to Afghanistan to meet with Karzai when Karzai went off the plantation to Beijing. So this is important. This is world-shaking potentially. Pakistan lining up with Saudi Arabia, two inmates of the empire trying to join up and make a jailbreak together. We have Scheuer, the former CIA guy, the anonymous of the 9/11 era. He has a Bahrain war scenario, right? Suppose we have now, the U.S. has started the destabilization of Bahrain as a matter of keeping control over the use of the fleet base. But now this has taken on a life of its own with help from the Iranians. So suppose we have continued agitation by the Shiites in Bahrain. We have a bloody crackdown by the Bahrain royal family and the Saudi forces that have been called in. A massacre of Shiites. Iran intervenes on the side of the Shiites. At that point, the U.S. intervenes against Iran. And if not World War III, you've got a nice big regional war of unimaginable proportions. In Libya, the Suez powers, Britain and France, demand more energetic bombing. We have today the op-ed by Suez Plus One. The tail on the Suez kite is now the wretched United States under Obama. Sarkozy, Cameron, and Obama demand that Gaddafi must go. This is way beyond the UN Security Council Resolution 1973, has nothing to do with it, completely illegal. It's interesting. Obama says if you massacre people, you can't play any part in the future of your country. But didn't I just see a death panel in your budget plan there, Barkey? There's always that interesting tu quoque argument. Tu quoque, you do exactly the same thing. The French defense minister wants a new UN Security Council resolution to bomb Libya more and attack on the ground, unlikely to get it. In Egypt, we've just had a kind of a thermidor where the army has now kicked all the demonstrators out of Tahrir Square. It simply underlines the fact that the repression and crackdown by Tantawi and the junta in Egypt simply shows that Egypt and Tunisia were not revolutions. They were simply palace coups with a bunch of deluded people in the square who thought that they were in command, but were not, and now they're finding that they never were. What are you going to do now in Egypt? Simply the idea that by hanging Mubarak you're going to solve your problems is Oedipal and absurd. You need a program. You better find ways to kick out the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and NATO. I had a debate about this with the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Great Britain. This you can see on the website. This was courtesy of Press TV of Iran. I also have a TV broadcast slightly earlier of 1 hour, which you can also see on tarpley.net, which is a debate with a Libyan and an expert from Lebanon and the neocon professor Richard Pipes. Please do take a look at that. But the idea that by calling in the army you're going to build democracy, this is an absurd notion, and the Egyptian, the Tahrir people are being punished for their complete naivete and complete lack of political development. The tradition now is if the army is drawn into politics and the army has to make all the political decisions, you may get some nationalist colonels in the Nasserist mold coming forward and saying, we're sick of this, we're sick of Tantawi as a foreign puppet, we're going to go back to the Nasserist tradition and actually fight the imperialists. So Bandar of Saudi Arabia plays the Pakistan card. Once you play the Pakistan card, you've also played the China card. Bandar has been playing the Russia card because he sees that Yemen and Bahrain are both attack avenues against Saudi Arabia. Now, we will soon have to devote a special segment on the developments inside Russia, but it looks like you're moving towards a situation where the Russian people will have a clear choice. You'll have Medvedev, who suggests that Russia should be subordinated to Western banking interests and should model itself on Silicon Valley and the U.S. economy, and Putin, who is interested in national independence. The big question for Putin is if he can get away from the neoliberal economics and go back to a true Russian traditional dirigism of the kind that Leibniz was recommending when he was active in the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences, the Promyshlenia Partia, the party of production, needs to come forward in Russia. The production people need to come forward. The people who are interested in industry and agriculture and raising standards of living and fighting the cultural problems on a strong basis of economic prosperity and rising standards of living. That's what you need. Not calling in Western bankers. We don't need Chubais. We don't need the heritage of the shock therapy, because if you choose the wrong way, you're going to be back to Yeltsin with a total dictatorship by the International Monetary Fund. In Syria, the destabilization continues, but I would say the further progress of the destabilizations depends to a significant degree on Libya, and the fact that Gaddafi has been able to resist this long has forced the imperialist nature of this entire enterprise out in the open. And of course, it doesn't end there. Destabilizations are now being planned for Kazakhstan. You can see that Kazakhstan is targeted. Lots of attention to Nazarbayev, who's been there for 20 years. Lots of attention to Belarus. A bomb in Belarus this week, perhaps triggering a new phase of destabilization. And in Ivory Coast, of course, the imperialists, after much slaughter by the Ouattara forces, finally got Gbagbo. They captured him, so he's now a prisoner of the UN and the French. So it's a new phase of imperialism, and it's time to realize that imperialism and colonialism are the issue, not just the personality of the authoritarian leader of this country or that country. So Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley on Twitter, and we'll see you next week.